Hello and welcome to Effective Reflection Skills for Trillium Peers in Mutuality Circles. I am Margit Bantowski, and teaching with me on this video is Joanne Leigh. Joanne, you want to say hi?
Hi. Happy to be here.
I'm really glad to be doing this with Joanne. She's a great partner in this work, so a lot of wisdom. So before going into reflection skills, I want to zoom out for a moment and clarify the purpose of a mutuality circle. So the purpose of a Trillium Mutuality Circle is to support and empower practitioners in their whole being realization in the heart and spirit of the Trillium path. And serving this purpose well requires awareness, commitment, and skill. So having that purpose sets the stage for how we hold mutuality circles and how we support each other in our awakening. So as you undoubtedly have already experienced, the simple process of speaking authentically, listening with our whole being, and reflecting skillfully can be profoundly catalytic and healing. And conversely, a lack of that kind of skill, the lack of attunement and skill in responding to each other, can actually be traumatizing, especially when someone has revealed themselves vulnerably in front of others in a circle situation.
C.C. Leigh, one of our established teachers and such a gift to the community, author of Becoming Divinely Human, has said, just as gazing addresses our deep need to be seen, conscious sharing addresses our deep need to be heard in a non-judgmental way. So being heard in this way can lower our resistance to being exactly as we are, being who we are, and drop us more fully into our divinely human wholeness. That's the great potential that we see in our circles. So the following exercises are going to be able to provide a direct experience of feedback that does and does not align with this overall aim of supporting conscious embodied awakening. Students new to the Trillium path can begin to develop these effective habits, and seasoned practitioners can benefit from periodic reminders of these basic practices. Here in Olympia, we have mutuality circles that meet without mentors or teachers present, and so these skills are really important to hold that container.
And part of what helps reinforce this intention is this awareness. So it's not about trying to do it perfectly. It's increasing our awareness and skill. It's something everybody can do. We have habits that come from, our culture, and we're needing to take time to unlearn those habits and cultivate new skills. So what we want to do is create a climate where we lift each other up rather than call each other out, rather than saying, oh, you reflected wrong, saying, oh, is this in the spirit of how we want to support each other? So, cultural habits of minimizing experience or of trying to fix and make people feel better or problem solve or get over it, all of this is deeply embedded in our psyche and our habits. And of course, it's going to slip out of all of us, even in a circle setting. So it's not about, blaming people and, oh, you're doing it wrong. It's about creating a generous environment in your mutuality circle, and a generous environment is conducive to learning and daring and is life positive. So having that kind of orientation really helps the group practice. Let's do this together. Let's learn and cultivate these skills together and help each other, sense when we're on the mark and a little bit off of our intention.
Yeah, the pure mutuality circles are places where we meet, where we come together as equals. So no one, including the facilitator, holds the role of teaching or setting anyone else straight with respect to the Trillium principles. So the function of teaching is reserved solely for Trillium Awakening teachers in good standing. Now, a mutuality circle facilitator may be encouraged to lead a topic discussion or use materials that other teachers have developed, but they don't actually teach.
Thank you for that clarification, because part of how we respond to each other, might be tempting to teach, and just staying really conscious of that temptation to educate another person is not really necessary from the peer level of support. And actually can be a little confusing because you may be a little off in your understanding of the teachings. So leaving that to the teachers can be a really good thing for everybody involved. So Joanne and I have identified 6 categories of giving feedback that are useful to become conscious of and have some discernment around and practice skills. And the sequence that we're going to give these exercises to you in is a deliberate sequence. The sequence is designed to evoke the most visceral awareness of the difference between ineffective and effective feedback. Of course, there's other categories and types of feedback between these 6, but these are, the biggest umbrellas and the most common ones that you're going to encounter and are a great starting point. So, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joanne to get us started.
So we really strongly suggest that you first explore these 4 common ways of giving feedback that do not support the embodied awakening process. And as we walk through these, I think it'll become very clear why we do this. So the first one is storytelling. And this may be a way that you've conversed with and shared with others in your life, all of your life. And so there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not an appropriate feedback for stimulating whole being awakening, embodied awakening. So in this example, the speaker shares and the listener then goes off on their own story, sort of steals the thunder from the speaker. There can be a quality of one-upmanship. My experience is better than yours, worse than yours. There can be an intention to display empathy. I know exactly how you feel. Who hasn't said that? That's how I felt when I was in a similar situation. The problem is that storytelling diverts the attention from the speaker to the listener. As I'm responding, I grab that focus and that spotlight. So Margit, if you'll give me a little peek into your life and then I'll demonstrate this.
Sure. I'm noticing the last, about a month that there's an edge for me around wanting to cultivate more pleasure or opening myself up to enjoying life. So the way in which I've been conditioned to be driven and making things happen, that's falling away even more. The good girl construct is starting to get really exhausted. And there's this sort of animal body loving what it loves of permission to actually enjoy life more. And it feels really right and life affirming. It's just a new horizon for me.
Yeah, I remember when that happened for me. So a couple of years back, I went through this period where I just was really focused on self-love and self-compassion and pleasure, and what a wonderful time.
And I just kind of want to slap her. Like, wait, yeah, great. I'm glad you had a good time, Joanne. And there's a way I feel invisible now, and disconnected from my experience.
Yeah. These are not easy. These are not easy to practice. There can be a feeling of wrongness about them. So we really encourage you to just relax into it and, have your own experience of, ooh, I don't really like doing that, and let the other person have their own experience of, ooh, that didn't land very well, and then you can talk about that.
Yeah, it's really great to practice this in pairs or in a group setting. We'll be doing another video where we'll teach you how to facilitate this in a group setting. But I love Joanne's invitation to, let's just play with these and try them on and just really see what happens.
Yeah.
So another one that's really common is, this is a category number 2, a second category. It's interpreting, analyzing, and judging. So what happens there is the person shares their experience, and then we interpret, or we add a model on it, or we shrink their experience into one word that, put them in a box, or judge it as a good or bad or should or shouldn't kind of a thing. And this is really habitual. We all do it. And, it's great to notice when it happens in your mind, and sometimes it'll come out of your mouth. But let's do a demonstration so you can see what it looks and feels like. Joanne, you want to share something with me?
Sure. So someone recently was talking about the law of attraction. And there was a time in my life when I spent, a fair amount of my focus. I put a lot of focus into the law of attraction, and really wanted to believe that by focusing on something and getting really clear about it and feeling those feelings, that I could manifest it and bring it into my life. And I found that it seemed to work some of the time and seemed to not work some of the time. And it seems also to be sort of in conflict with my new way of being on the Trillium path. So this person was bringing it up recently, and I just found myself kind of revisiting that and wondering, how much validity there is to it.
So, you really need to be in a place where you're not judging someone else so much. Like, you might have moved on beyond, the law of attraction, and you've outgrown it, but, you really need to keep practicing having your heart open. So, I see you being kind of judgmental and kind of shutting down and like a superior attitude to this other person. And, that's just not a very enlightened way to be.
So the feedback, ironically has that impact on me. I feel myself shutting down and kind of closing my heart and not being very open to hearing how judgmental I am. Yeah, so backfire, these will all backfire.
Mm-hmm. And what I was doing is, judging her. I was analyzing Joanne from the perspective of what a spiritual person should be doing and labeling her behavior from that lens. So just practicing noticing what lenses we're using to judge someone's behavior or feelings, as they should or shouldn't be that way, or it's good or it's bad, or, and interpretation can also be like, oh, this is a really great sign. You're really on track. You're becoming much more spiritual. So that's still a judgment,
Mm-hmm.
Just noticing how it can even be positive, but it's still a judgment. It's still kind of confining someone into an interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have a tendency to want to affirm people, and I think that's a natural, healthy tendency, but not necessarily in a share situation where we're reflecting. So the next category that we're going to demonstrate we call minimizing. And here the speaker is sharing something vulnerable, tender, and the listener minimizes it in some way. So suggesting that the speaker shouldn't feel that way, or that it's not true, denying their experience. It's not really that bad. It could be worse. Or, wow, you should be feeling great about this and that and the other instead of feeling bad about this. So, Margit, if you'll share something with me.
I'm not sure I want to. No, I'm just
You know what's coming.
Sure. So recently I was teaching at a sitting, and I was a little tired, a little out of sorts, and for multiple reasons, and many that I'm not even aware of, I felt like I was a bit off my game, that the way I was responding to students seemed a little off. I found myself second guessing and felt some frustration or sadness, well, probably both, that this group of students wasn't getting me at my best game.
Mm, mm. Well, you should definitely not feel bad about that experience, because you are a good teacher, you're a brilliant teacher, and you don't really know how something's landed for a student. So I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't spend any time feeling bad about that.
Huh. So I noticed there's part of me that felt like that little ego perk up of you saying that I'm a good teacher, kind of wants to hear that. On the other hand, the part of me that felt kind of deflated didn't feel seen at all. And I came out of my body and up into my head, and now we're talking on this level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, of course, being told I shouldn't feel the way I feel, just my impulse is to punch that person. Very visceral response.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are watching this video, you may want to just take a moment and be in the same place that the person who's sharing is, just trying it on, how that feedback would feel to you in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So the fourth and final mode of responding that, in our way of looking, separates people from their experience and is not very helpful for the embodied awakening process, is one you've all heard about: advising, fixing, manipulating, making things better. So you've all seen this. Someone does a share, and then we come in and start doing some strategizing around what could be done differently or be done better, or how to get over or through or beyond what's being presented. So Joanne, you want to share something? I'll demonstrate this.
Sure. So I'm worried about my daughter. She's in a relationship that I don't think is a very healthy one, and it's been an on again, off again thing. And I think that it must be on again, because when it's on again, she tends not to communicate as much with me. And I think it's out of, shame or embarrassment, or I don't know really, but I'm just concerned that she's doing harm to herself by hanging out with this man. And I don't want to be an intrusive mother, but on the other hand, I want to know what's going on with her. And so it's tough.
Sounds like you should probably put some healthy boundaries in place with her. It sounds like you're getting hooked by your interactions with her, and having some clear agreements of around communication might be really good. And you've got to keep in mind, it's not your job. She's grown. It's none of your business. It's not your job anymore. And you've done your best, and you're done. So giving yourself, taking yourself off the hook might be the best thing you could do for both of you.
I'm feeling a little defensive. Yeah. So, I can't, yeah, lots and lots and lots of advice giving in our culture, and it just doesn't land well. It doesn't land well.
So how would it have been if I had said, oh, when I was struggling, with this child in my life, they're now 20 years old and they're in a depression, and I just came to realize there's nothing I can do. It's not, they're adult and there's nothing I can do. So that's my story.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, it's still about you and not about me. Yeah. Not helpful.
Not helpful. So the point being that advice can be couched, like I can say, oh, Joanne, your share made me remember this experience I had with a child in my life. And then I go on into my story, and because I resolved it, it becomes a form of advice.
Mm-hmm.
So it might feel like empathy, but it's couched advice because I've already gone through it, and this is what helped me, and and the implication is that the other person should do the same. So,
or a form of criticism that I haven't done that or figured that out, or yeah. Okay, so we're going to move now into the two final categories of reflection. And these are ways of reflecting, ways of giving feedback that actually do support the aspirant, the practitioner, in keeping the contact with themselves, with their experience, supporting the awakening process. So the first one that we will demonstrate is mirroring. And in this way of responding, the listener is going to give the speaker feedback to them about them. So the exact words that they spoke, for instance, I heard you say, and sometimes that can be just one word, one key word. I heard the word grace. And it doesn't have to be, long and involved. You may listen to somebody for 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You don't have to encapsulate the whole thing. It's just what landed for you that felt significant. Could be the essence of what you heard. I hear how hard the situation is for you. And if you do paraphrase, which is okay, just be sure that you stay very true to what the speaker said and that you're not adding your own interpretations or projections, which I heard you say, and then this is what I think. So, Margit, if you would share something with me.
Yeah, I'm wanting to weave more creativity back into my life. Just got done organizing a big event, and my art has suffered for a long time, been backburnered. And I have a new app on my iPad that's a mandala drawing app, and I'm noticing that it does stimulate my creativity and my love of pattern and color and design, but I'm a little concerned because there's this addictive quality to it. I find myself staying up. I go to bed, but then I sneak the tablet in, and I stay up a lot longer than I mean to. So there's some strange addictive thing going on too, and find myself a little puzzled about that and how to relate to a deeper creative process than that.
So I really hear how creativity is being with you or calling to you, that it had been backburnered for a while and is wanting more of your time and attention, that you found this app on your computer, and it comes with some question, some curiosity or concern because it seems addictive.
Yeah, I noticed when you reflected that back, I had tears starting to come up when you mentioned that my creativity had been on the back burner for a long time. Yeah. And I am concerned about the addictive thing. Something feels off. So, Joanne's reflection keeps me connected and sensing into my experience, and wanting to go deeper or more discernment into it.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And that was a fairly lengthy reflection. So if even having that be broken into two pieces, how long my creativity has been on hold, and then, oh, I found something, but it might not be good. So it was great to have that much reflected. And as peers, it's a lot to track. You're listening to everybody in the group. It might be a bit much to try to, Joanne is very skilled at this, and it's wonderful. And you may, need to just take time to, what's one thing that really struck you as you practice doing this in a mutuality environment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so if we lined up 4 different people listening to that share, they might each mirror something different. And that would be great, as long as they're staying true to what you said and your feelings. All of them would work.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the beauty of a mutuality circle. You get, like a multi-mirror reflection coming back. It's really quite exquisite.
Mm-hmm.
So you, if we only did mirroring, we'd start to notice that there's something a little dry about it, because mirroring, I get back myself, but I don't, when Joanne reflected me, I got myself back and helped me drop in. But there also was a way that I didn't sense Joanne. And so the 6th and final category of feedback is responding. And what we mean by that is, how, as the listener, am I affected? How are we affected by what we hear? And I consider this as a way of adding some moisture in the exchange. Like, the human to human resonance actually supports us being with our experience more deeply. So I'm going to give you several examples of what I mean by what we mean by responding. And responding is almost a little bit more advanced. Mirroring, we're just listening for something that person says. We can keep our attention outward focused on the speaker and notice, catch what they said. Responding means whole being listening. I'm listening to the speaker, and I'm also noticing how I'm affected moment by moment to what I'm hearing that person say. So it's a meta skill. It takes some practice, and if this is hard for you at first, that's fine. Just keep bringing awareness to your body as you're listening to the other person without disconnecting from them. So things that you might notice is a physical sensation when someone's sharing. You might notice, oh, my shoulders got tight, or my belly got fluttery, or my heart feels open. So physical sensation. You might notice an emotion. So when someone's sharing, a wave of grief might come through. Oh, a little trickle of fear. So noticing emotion. Another thing that might happen is an image or a phrase. You might listen to someone and you might get an image of a doorway or a waterfall or, whatever. So an image or a phrase could be captivation, a word, captivation, or grace, or, And finally, another thing like that kind of integrates all of that might be what you're struck by or touched by. Like, what stood out? Your most impact. I was really struck by how much you're leaning into your own experience, what you're struck by. So Joanne, do you want to share something, and I'll practice one of these response, or maybe 2 of them.
Sure. So I am about, maybe 4 or 5 weeks into a new way of eating. And so I have brought a pretty rigorous discipline into my life around food. And it's challenging. I do have some support through a Facebook community. But essentially, like I've given up sugar and I've given up flour. I never did drink much, but I'm not drinking at all. So no mind-altering substances, regular meals, no snacking. So really, rigor is what is the word that really fits for me. And I'm just noticing all kinds of stuff as I walk this path and as I practice that, how much unconscious behavior before there was for me around food and drink. And so it's really challenging me, really stretching me.
Wow. So when you were first describing this new way of eating, I found some place in me that was contracting. I felt some fear. And then when you said you had support, there's a group, I found myself relaxing. And then when you talked about how you're learning so much, I found myself just sort of curious and in awe and like leaning in with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And although reflections can often come at the end of a share, it makes me want to jump right back in. Like I still feel like the ball's in my court and there's more to explore, and I'm curious too. And so just very effective at keeping me with myself and with my own experience. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So that is a little bit of a paradox, how responding, I shared how I was affected, and yet it allowed Joanne to stay connected to her experience. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of a fine art of doing that. It takes some practice, but it's really worth cultivating. So we'll be putting together another video. Look for the other video where we give you some tips and suggestions on how to run these 6 feedback exercises in a group setting so that you can support a mutuality circle in cultivating these skills and practicing this exercise together. And again, it's practice, not perfection. Joanne, you want to add a closing comment?
I just want to thank everybody for learning with us. So we're still honing our own skills. We're committed to this practice, and we've seen its potential and its power in mutuality circles and with each other. So we encourage you to practice with us. Thanks.